Let's start with problem 1. Julia, can you read problem 1 for us?
What is the slope of the line having the equation 2y plus 4x plus 5 equals 0?
Okay. So, using these steps of questioning to figure out problem-solving techniques, what is the first question we want to ask ourselves?
What do I want to know?
And what do we want to know, Chris?
The slope.
The slope. Great. So, if we want to know the slope, we have to think about what we already know. Second step. So what do we already know, Julia?
The equation of the line.
So what is the equation of the line?
2y plus 4x plus 5 equals 0.
Great. Okay, so once we have the equation of the line, what would be our next step? What is the last question we want to ask ourselves?
What can I do with what I know?
So, what can we do with what we know? What type of format do we want to put this into to figure out the slope?
Y equals mx plus b.
Y equals mx plus b. So let's solve this together. What would be the first step here, Chris?
Subtract 5 from both sides.
Subtract 5 from both sides. And what might we want to subtract from both sides, Julia?
4x.
Alright, so we can also subtract 4x. And that would leave us with 2y equals negative 4x minus 5. Now, this looks kind of like y equals mx plus b format, but what might we want to do, Chris?
Divide 2 by both sides.
Divide both sides by 2. And what do we get, Julia?
Y equals negative 2x minus 5 halves.
Y equals negative 2x minus 5 halves. So, if we compare y equals negative 2x minus 5 halves over y equals mx plus b, knowing that m equals the slope, what would be the slope of our line?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So, which of the answers, A through E, are correct? B. B. Fantastic. Okay. So, let's move on to question number 2. Okay, Chris, why don't you read question 2 for us?
If line M passes through the points -1, -1, and 2, 3 in the standard xy coordinate plane, which of the following is true of the slope of line M? Is it must be positive, it may be negative, it must be negative, it must be undefined, or it must be 0?
Okay, so before we tackle this one, why don't we go over what positive, negative, 0, undefined all mean? So, a positive slope, look, something like this. So the black line has a positive slope. A negative line, use the blue, go in the opposite direction. Go down instead of going up. A line with a slope of 0, the red, flat, right across. And a line that would be undefined, go right up and down. So, knowing this, what is the first question we want to ask ourselves in solving this problem, Chris?
Which of the following possible answers would apply to the coordinates that were given?
So, we want to know which one is true. Okay, so Julia, what is the second thing that we might want to ask ourselves, knowing that we want to find out which one is true?
What do we already know?
Okay, so, Chris, what do we already know?
We know the points -1, -1, and 2, 3.
Okay, so, Chris, why don't you come up here and draw the points -1, -1, and 2, 3. Fantastic. And why don't you connect those for us? Great. Thank you. You can sit down. So, knowing that this is what our graph looks like, we've figured out what we already know, and this is what we can do with what we know. We can draw it out. So I think it's one of the simplest ways or methods that you can use. Just draw it out. So, which of the 4, positive, negative, 0, or undefined, would this slope be?
Chris?
Positive.
Positive. So, which of the letters is correct?
F.
F. Fantastic. This graph is positive.